The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
Yeah, hit the button. We're starting. Naylor on a rant. Go ahead.
This is the Minnesota Soccer Podcast.
Oh my God.
I need to put out the vibes of the head coaches of the MLS game yesterday who were off the chain. Okay, we're good.
I actually, just from an outside observer, I actually think this is good because I think this kind of emotion, fair or unfair, does engage people with a sport that maybe they're on the fence. Like maybe they love the World Cup but don't love the MLS. If you see rants like that, cool, man.
Now, and understand, this was not even just the Minnesota game yesterday. Did you see the thing that happened in the Montreal San Jose game?
I did.
So we can start with that because this is just how crazy of a day it was all across the league yesterday, and it comes to Minnesota later. Montreal and San Jose played a game yesterday. Fatai Alashe is subbed onto the game because of an injury. He's a striker, plays for San Jose. 41st minute of the game, like right before halftime. That happens. Fine. Team goes into halftime. Whatever happens, they're down 1-0. Montreal, San Jose's terrible, and Minnesota lost them twice. You know the drill. Gotta get the local tie-in.
It should always be repeated that they lost twice to them.
Because we're going to talk about just the disaster that is the San Jose Earthquakes right now. They come back out for the second, line up like normal. Head coach of San Jose, whose name I forget, goes to the fourth official to make a substitution, pulls Alade after 4 minutes without saying anything to him. Team says it's a groin injury. He looked fine. He wasn't hurt. Like groin strain, whatever. He and coach a very animated, very verbal discussion about why am I sitting 4 minutes. You don't pull somebody you subbed on in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, like you'd have to literally take the ball, kick it into your own goal. Be the only reason you should be allowed, have to be pulled off for playing for 4 minutes. I don't know what else you would do, and he didn't do that. So, that one to me stunk as a power move. That was clearly some type of power move by the coach. For some reason.
You like the play? Get back here.
You just can't do that.
It's Michael Strahe.
Maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
It's bordering. To me, it's the guy couldn't even have done something like during the week at practice, and shown up coach, because you can't waste a substitution in a game like that to get your message across. He had to have done something like at halftime. He had to have made a jerk comment of some sort at halftime, and the coach was like, power move. I am the alpha in this situation. That's what that spoke to me as what happened.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So then let's get back to the home turf. We'll talk about the World Cup final, which just happened a couple hours ago, by the way, in case we didn't mention it. This is the Minnesota Soccer Podcast. Dave Naylor, Nic Hallett, repping the team France, and Tom Schreier, whose team won
Belgium.
third place. Good job.
Third place. We were joking about this because I was in the Twins locker room when it was going on, and of course, depressed Max Kepler, whose German team went out, as we all know, a little bit earlier than expected. I was watching that. And I was like, yeah. He's like, what's wrong with you?
That's fantastic.
Belgium. We're all kind of wondering, why did they play this game? But I suppose being third is something looking back, you can be like, well, back in 18,
well,
we were third place.
You get your medals and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It still to me reeks of a game that's
Anyway, we're gonna go full in on the World Cup and all the reactions and stuff to all those games later. We're going to talk about Minnesota United, who did win the game that they played this week that mattered the other game, but we can talk about that in a bit because I thought that was interesting for different reasons. 3-2, a second straight home win. One was July 4th over Toronto. This one 3-2 over Salt Lake. For which Minnesota were, again, as they were in the Toronto game, comfortably the better team for a large portion of this game. And the scoreline showed that. They had a 3-0 lead. Darwin was on 1 goal and 2 assists. They were riding comfortable.
The stadium's jumping. Fans are singing.
Jeff Ruder of The Athletic is an actual wizard. More on that in a bit.
I am super curious why you said that.
I will
Go on.
tell you and inform you because it was one of my favorite moments in the press box all day yesterday.
I mean, it had to be. Go on.
So the first half goes relatively uneventful. We're in the 3-5-2, exact same lineup as ran it out. Doing what it does, it kind of having that problem that it's had before where feels like they might be one player short in attack just because there are a lot of crosses being put into the box that nobody's getting on the end of. And credit to Salt Lake, defenders were cutting out crosses left, right, and center. I wrote in my recap of this game on zonecoverage.com that Christian Ramirez could have had a hat trick in the first half if the defenders had not been on point because those crosses were heading right for him. Last man's getting to him every single time.
It's a good point to make, too, just quickly, too, because one of Ramirez's best qualities is his positioning.
Mm-hmm. He was in the right place. It was like... It continues to be remarkable that he hasn't scored. This is now his second longest scoring drought of the season after the one he had to open the season. Over 300 minutes of gameplay since he's scored. The last time he scored was against Montreal. I feel like there was one against that. Check my recap. I wrote about it in there.
Yeah. But it is important to...
It's important to note that they're trying. They are absolutely trying. He's involved. He's in the right places.
And he's doing some right stuff. But I think it is important to point out like a positive about him because I think, and just to talk about him briefly because later on I think there's a Ramirez discussion that needs to take place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've hinted at that in both on Twitter and on this podcast in the past.
True.
Second half comes. Opening goal. It comes as a matter of some controversy. The ball came to Darwin Quintero on the right side of the pitch. Does a dribble, gets into the penalty box, defended by Justin Glad of Salt Lake. Get into a physical battle over the ball. Darwin comes out on the right side of the battle. Glad ends up on the ground. You can make your judgments about that when you watch the play yourself. For your comparison, Darwin Quintero is 5'5" on a good day. Justin Glad is 6'1". Glad ends up on the ground. That's not how that's supposed to work.
Right.
Just going to put that part of the reasoning out there. Darwin puts in a pass across that one of the three United players in the box is going to finish. Ibsen finishes it, third goal of the season. United go up. 10 minutes later, Darwin does Darwin things again. Chips Nick Raimondo from the corner of the box, which is stupid that he can just keep doing this at will. That was an awesome goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just thought we were gonna hit the controversy of the coaches.
Oh, great. I transitioned too fast.
It's
so,
okay.
First goal, talked a little bit about that. After the goal is scored, Salt Lake players and Salt Lake coach Mike Petke are looking for the goal to be reviewed through VAR to see if there was a foul in the build-up. Obviously, the Quintero Glad incident was the highlight of it. Mike Petke lost his mind and got sent to the stands at that point, which the other note you have to consider, which I didn't talk about, the first half there was an incident. Rasmus Schuley picked up a yellow card in the 20th minute for a tackle in which he was very late coming into a Salt Lake player.
And frankly, nowhere near the ball.
Not even close to the ball.
Near it.
So it was a play that absolutely deserved a yellow card. You could argue it deserved more than that.
Certainly.
So before we move on to the rest of the game, Petke talked after the game. This was after the rest of his comments to media. I was not present for this, but this was put up by the Real Salt Lake's team Twitter account. So this is from them to the public. Real Salt Lake head coach Mike Petke.
Yeah, there's something I want to add. I was hoping you guys would ask. You didn't ask, and I kind of went with it. Said maybe that's the best for it. But why did I get kicked out tonight? Why did I get kicked out tonight?
It's perfect that he's about to go on this rant, too, because he's got that East Coast.
I know, I was going to mention that.
On a Danny Acosta who's in behind the midfield line, studs up, a foot off the ground, stud showing into his leg. If he is a foot to the left of Danny, face on, he breaks his leg. There's none of this crap that the referees do to the VAR, no looking at VAR, or nothing. It's a yellow card. Marcelo gets a yellow card, what? 12 minutes later for toe poking the ball during a set piece 15 yards away.
Marcelo
I mean,
Cielo
what are we
was really
doing
light,
here?
too.
Quintero in the goal doesn't look at Justin. I mean, doesn't look at the ball. Plays literally not the ball.
This is a good
runs
rant.
in, extends his arm, looks at
This
the last
part about
second,
Quintero,
and they score.
He doesn't
And
have a
this
leg to
crap
stand
again.
on, and he's just wrong. But a lot of what he says in this rant,
The
up to
conversation
this
from
point
Alan
and
Kelly,
going
let me tell you
forward,
something. The conversations
is
with the fourth
accurate.
official over the last 4 games was 3 games starting 3 games ago. Jefferson Savarino's being targeted. Know what the fourth official says to me? Yeah, I know. We talked about it. We've watched it. We're good. And continuous fouls. Nothing. You know, I don't want to talk about the last 4 games, though. I want to talk about tonight. Because up until that point, we had more shots leading into the second half. We were blocked up. We were good denying anything. And it's just, you know, it's not good enough. And then I get from the only thing I get from MLS is stop criticizing the referees. I want to know where the referees are right now. Why can't we ask the referee a question?
This is a fair question.
Why can't we do that? Why can't we ask, why didn't you go to VAR? Why didn't you call that? Why, when the studs are coming up, you just give a yellow card? That would make them more human.
These are all
it would
questions
be better to MLS.
fans
it would
have.
be better for
And if
this
an MLS
league,
head coach
for the
has
fans,
those, that's a
for
problem.
the
He should be able to
owners,
communicate
for the
with
coaches,
someone. For
sure.
for the players, to hear from them and to hear their side of the story. And perhaps then we say, okay, I see it. Maybe it happened a little fast. You know, maybe the guy in the booth, wherever the hell he is, watching this, you know, maybe he was watching The Simpsons at the same time. I don't know. I have no idea. But
That's his
it's
best
not good
line.
enough to me.
That's so
and I'll
good.
take the fine. Jeff Agus, fine me. Fine me. I don't care anymore. You know, nobody else, no other coach in this league steps up a little more than they should. I'm going to. So drain my bank account. I don't give a shit anymore. Okay?
No better person than someone with an East Coast accent to get after that. That's awesome.
I had 2 quick thoughts, and then you can get to the soccer aspect. First of all, I wonder how an East Coast guy goes over there in that market, because I think of Salt Lake, especially
seriously.
now, like the people I know from there now are very like West Coast, like kind of the Pacific Northwest, although that's not technically where that's located. And I just don't know how like an East Coast guy with that,
it's bizarre.
I mean, he could go on with Chris Russo, right? He could be on with like, you know, Mike and the Mad Dog.
Seriously.
like trading vibes with them.
Seriously.
What's soccer? You know, but
seriously.
And so I do like it when a coach comes out and has something to say about how things are done rather than just like my team got screwed. Like he's looking at procedural trains rather than yeah, and then the other thing is, I get that. I'm sure the reporters there, and you guys are there obviously on scene. I don't cover soccer, but I cover other sports here. You do usually wait until like the next availability to really dig deep into something emotional, like a guy getting kicked out. But I just can't imagine a game where like Mulder would get kicked out and no one would ask him about the ejection, even if you get the perfunctory, you know, I had a dispute, I shouldn't, you know, whatever, even if it's a 3-second answer. It's a little weird no one asked him, given how theatrical it was.
Well,
it
and the thing about the theatrics from the head coach perspective is Adrian Heath is one of the most theatrical managers I've ever seen manage a soccer team.
That is a fact.
And he hasn't come close to getting sent to the stands this year, I don't think. Even in United's most contentious issues where he has had problems, and you can look back at the podcast. United have had games where refereeing decisions like this have gone against them multiple times this year, and the question of the refereeing standard in MLS is one that's gotten brought up a whole lot over the last while.
Well, I think Petke's a much younger guy, and so Heath's been through this. I mean, he's managed in England,
sure,
in the highest flights at times, and with premier teams. So he's experienced that. I think with Orlando, he's experienced that. And that's why it was really interesting. And they noted this on the broadcast later that when Petke got kicked, was like getting kicked out, Heath actually tried to console him. And they asked after the game, Heath, what'd you say to him? And Adrian was like, I told him not to say anything more because I know how much trouble you can get in. And then clearly he didn't take that advice later on in the locker room when he got interviewed because we just played the clip.
Yeah, but I think this will be remembered. Like, if anything, I would take his side on this over the league. And if the league comes back at him with just a fine and is like, shut up, I think that's a really bad sign for a league that needs to have... Like, it has to have a positive image. Like, you want to be like the NBA where people look... You don't want to be the NFL. You know, that's the extreme, right? You want to be the NBA that everyone's like, oh, this is an up-and-coming league and it's really fun and, you know, this and that. And I think the league should listen to him.
And again, he, to me, is dead wrong about the Darwin Quintero situation. I don't think...
His own gripes, yeah.
Just the 2 things he's upset with, the Schiller tackle and the Quintero non-call in his eyes. He's just wrong about that one. His center back chooses to dive in that situation and try to earn a foul in a super precarious position, which then allows his team to get scored on because he chose to do that in that situation. He's just wrong about that. But every other point he makes, Schuler very, very likely could have got sent off and got a red card for that challenge because it was horrid and poorly timed and dangerous. And then all the procedural things he brings up, like you're saying, Tom, those are super fair points. And if an MLS head coach can't get those answers or feels like he can't communicate on those things, that's messed up. Because if he can't, who can? And so he needs to be able to understand the VAR situation very clearly. And if the MLS needs to be able to communicate that to the players and the coaches and, frankly, the fan base, too. Because otherwise it's just going to foster a confusion that's going to hang over the league a bit.
And that's the really bigger picture thing about this is we can agree or disagree on the individual plays within this game. And Petke wanted to focus specifically on the plays of this game. But the implications for this, I thought, were extremely fairly said by him and are something that fans of every team in the league should take into consideration when they're considering how they view the league. Referees in MLS don't seem to be the easiest to get comment from.
That's every league too.
And
it's usually like a pool reporter and all that.
The NBA has gotten better about like using the pool reporter in games that are contentious. I know that the one time that we tried to have a pool reporter for referees this year, that wasn't able to happen because of something that happened with paperwork, which I found interesting. Because that did happen at one Minnesota United game this year. I believe it was the one where Yellow Bar got sent off, although that wasn't home. I don't remember which game.
Maybe that was in Kansas City, though, when you were in Kansas City.
It wasn't in Kansas City. It was definitely a game here. I forget which game it was, but it was it was a game where there was a seriously questionable refereeing decision that went against Minnesota.
I mean, it's just regardless, though, especially, and I think this is one of his points, though, is like with VAR, the ref can't because I don't know if you guys ever in competitive games have asked refs, you'll get responses where refs are like, I didn't see it. I'm going to be honest with you as a player because you're asking me right now, but I didn't see it, and that's why I didn't call it. And you're like, and you'd be surprised at how much that makes you feel better. Because you're like, all right, fair enough. You're human. You missed it. I get that. But to Petke's point, when there's VAR and the ref gets to go back and look at it, and he chooses not to use VAR, why? I want to know why. That's interesting. You can just tell me the reason. I need that validation to know why. If he does go back and look at the VAR, okay, I still disagree with your call, but just tell me why you made it. I don't think that's asking a lot.
Yep. So I agree. So that's one of the frames of this game, was Petke leaving the game in the 52nd minute after first goal was scored for Minnesota. Has his comments after the game. That is what it is.
I also, just one real quick thing with Heath. He seems to have the Tibbs thing where he's tough on the refs, isn't he? But like Tibbs Tibbs knows what the line is. I don't know what it is because it seems he does everything you can to like get kicked out.
Well, and Heath seems to be exactly the same way, where he's
he must
always
know exactly.
he's always in that conversation with the fourth official.
How
right
often?
Next to him.
So like I know the names of the umpires in the MLB and the refs in the NBA because their names constantly get brought up in like press conferences and stuff like that, or even sometimes in side sessions. Is there a relationship like that in the MLS where the coaches know the guys by name and you start to recognize like?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if that is the case.
If not, that should
a little
be the
bit.
case.
I'm sure a bit. And I feel like there was some comments from a game earlier this season where like they were referencing the refs, experience level, and they knew about him. So I'm sure there's some element of that. Yeah.
Well, and there's at least some element of tracking it from a media fan perspective of what is this guy's record in terms of yellow cards, red cards distributed? What is his record in terms of refereeing to the home or away? Does the home team have more fouls awarded for them?
Yeah, it's like studying the strike zone of a certain.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a particular Twitter account that I'm thinking of. It's MLS Ref Stats or something like that tweets out ref stats for every single match.
An independent account.
Okay. Totally like independent out there, tracks down all the data, does it themselves, which is worth a follow if you're interested in that kind of thing.
Listen to what the Salt Lake guy had to say. It just sounds like there's a disconnect there, and I think in a roundabout way, he addressed that. As in, the relationship just has to be better, even if you don't like the call. It maybe doesn't escalate to the point that it did.
Yep.
This weekend.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
So, moving to a Minnesota-specific perspective again. After that, United go on to score Darwin's chip in the 62nd minute, and then Darwin sets up Miguel Ibarra to score his 5th goal of the season in the 68th minute. Now, the moment of hilarity in the press box that happened, Jeff Fruiter of The Athletic tweeted out after the first goal. In the 2017 matchup between Real Salt Lake and Minnesota United at TCF Bank Stadium, Minnesota United scored their 3 goals in the 52nd, 62nd, and 68th minute. Tweeted out after they scored their first goal in the 52nd. After the first goal. Then they score the second goal in the 62nd minute. And we're like, well, And so then, like, all of us sitting on the front of the press row, as soon as the clock turns to 67th minute, 68th minute of the game, everybody hits a tweet and starts looking at the play. United get a counterattack down the right side of the field with Quintero, and I'm like, oh, my God. And it goes in
That's
for the
amazing.
third goal. So
That's amazing.
that was just the strangest coincidence you can imagine. And credit to Jeff for getting his Google fingers on and smelling that out after the first goal.
That's crazy.
So all 3 goals in the same exact minutes as they were in the mirrored matchup last season.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's so strange.
That is.
So in that state of mind, United are up 3-0. Everybody's happy. Adrian Heath, for his part, is making substitutions with an eye on the schedule moving forward because United obviously have 2 more games this week with a game on Wednesday and a game on Sunday. So first 2 players he takes off are Ibsen and Rasmus Schuler, which probably 2 of the players who have played the most minutes of anybody this year, doing the hardest running. Schuler on a yellow card, makes sense to get him out of there. So you have movements in for Colin Martin for Maximiano. As Maximiano comes on, Salt Lake score their first goal after a really, really dumb foul right on the outside of the box. Perfectly executed free kick routine by Joao Plata. Nothing you can do about it.
What a performance he had, by the way.
Bullet.
Oh, my goodness.
And then, not a set piece, but Plata gets in on a run on a cross, beats Miguel Ibarra on a header. Plata is smaller than Darwin Quintero is, by the way. He's like 5'3".
But thick.
But
He's way thicker
He's a big
than Quintero.
dude. Yeah. So he gets in there, beats Miguel Ibarra on a header, and suddenly it's 3-2 in the 85th minute. Now the mood in the stadium has changed because if we recall back to the Toronto game, United led by 4-1, 3-goal lead, gave up 2 goals in the late going of that game, and this doesn't feel as good anymore. And so for my part, from the 82nd minute or 85th minute, whenever Salt Lake scored their second goal, I thought the United did an admirable job of shutting the game down. I really, really do. I thought that they held possession as well as they had the entire game. They were in the right places at the right time. I thought that Maximiano in particular had a really good shift off the bench, got in there, got in the tackle where he needed to be, held possession, got a good pass out to Mason Toye to waste about a minute of time down in the corner, and then couple of clutch interceptions from Miguel Ibarra, a couple of clutch interceptions from Alexi Gomez, a bicycle kick clearance from Francisco Calvo, which ended the game in spectacular fashion. And you've got your 3 points. But as Nick, you were watching at home, you got the Adrian Heath on the final whistle reaction, and what did that look like?
I literally ended up like laughing out loud because I was just like didn't expect it, and he was just animated and just fiery
with the TV reporter
Jamie Watson.
Yeah.
Like, minute after, 60 seconds after the final whistle, and he was so upset. And usually he does like 3 questions with Jamie, and he kind of and it's funny because he always answers them in the same tone, like, "Oh, I thought we could have got more from the match," like that kind of thing. And then but for this, he was just like, after that, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not going to put up with that. And it was just like, whoa, like, yeah, it was awesome. And so as I was telling Naylor was just like, I'm following all the guys who are at the game in the press box, and knowing that they're about to get this, some level of this in the post game.
And for the press box perspective, we have the broadcast on in the press box, and a lot of people have it on their laptops. So we had an idea of what was coming to us when we went down the stairs.
Well, and I thought,
seeing what happened.
But it takes, and I don't know if people know this, but it's Jamie Watson interviews right after the game's over. There's another 15 minutes, including Heath talking to his team before he meets with the rest of the press,
which is called cool-off time, or it is in other sports. Like, the intent is literally to cool them off.
Yeah. And so then I start seeing David and others, start tweeting that he's coming out firing, and I'm like, how upset is this guy? Because like he had time to cool down and his team won.
So I put most of Heath's quotes in my recap. We're gonna play a little bit of my audio from his press conference last night, just because I think the tone is important.
Adrian, how do you look back on this one? 3 points or some of the miscues?
3 points. Did our best to throw it away. Try to throw away 75 minutes of good work by people deciding that they know best. They'll do what they want rather than doing what we know is right.
So certain players in particular that went off
I
script.
guess compared to what he was
together, we lose together.
on the field,
The group.
he is way cooled
The
down.
group scored the goals.
on
The
this
group
one.
conceded the goals.
It's the second time that the team's been up by 3 at home and then gave up 2 more goals 10 days ago against Toronto. Do you worry about that becoming a trend?
What do you think? So don't you? Game should have been over. Game's done. 75 minutes quality football.
You've got a long career in this game. What's it going to take to get that mentality switched back?
For them to understand that they don't know everything. And do what's asked of them. And we'll be okay.
And see, the thing,
Too
he's
many
not.
people in and around at this football club who have an opinion on it.
Yeah, so that's good. That quote about too many people in and around the football club that think they know what they're doing, that it struck a weird tone even for what had happened in the game. It's
Yeah, that's true.
what
It sticks out as like, that sounds like that's not necessarily specific to this game.
No, not at all. Like that was the thing that struck me in a weird way about it when I was listening, when I was sitting in the room with that.
Yeah.
Is I'm like, he was asked about the play, like if he was gonna name some names as to who's doing that, and the players. We talked to Miguel Ibarra and we talked to Michael Boxall, and those were the only 2 we talked to last night. Players were asked about. Heath was talking about this. Did you guys know anything about it? And both of them didn't. Were like, I don't know.
That's
And
a little
they would've
concerning. 'Cause
Deflected from it, because that's one of those things that makes it sound like there is some kind of discord within
Yes.
the club or within the locker room that otherwise, like, sure, they gave up 2 late goals again, but like this
won.
team has a bad defense. They do that and they won again.
Yeah.
So like. For that to have changed this narrative as dramatically as it did, because of that's what Heath chose to say, I found very, very weird.
How many
and
guys
interesting.
freelance? Like, how often do you guys see it, or watching the game again? Do you see freelance or things that would
Guys taking plays off.
maybe not taking plays off, but like doing their own thing, or maybe not playing within the system? Or I mean, is that an issue with United? No.
I think what Heath's alluding to is like less like obvious, like dude, what are you doing? Like it's more just like what happened to me. In my take on what happened the other night is that just collectively everyone like got like we're up 3-0 and relaxed. Kind of a standard complacency problem that happens in every sport.
Yeah.
And his point is just like, who do you think you are? You guys are just one season away from being an expansion franchise. We lose all the time. Our road record's terrible. Almost none of you have really proven yourself anywhere else, apart from Quintero and Calvo and Ibsen. Like, who do you think you are? Like, how dare you? Like, we're up 3-0. And frankly, all of that you could credit mainly to Bobby Shuttleworth and Darwin Quintero that were even up 3-0.
And Miguel Ibarra.
Miguel definitely a good piece of it as well. But how dare you? Like, look at what all these guys have put us in this position, and you can't even carry your weight a little bit, and you're going to mentally check out? Like, you don't. And that was my favorite quote of what he said to Jamie right after the game on the field was, or maybe I saw this was tweeted out. I can't remember exactly where I saw this, but it was reported that he said to. Yes, it was. It was Jamie after the game saying he could hear what was being said in the locker room, and he said that Heath said to the players, "You think you guys are good enough to switch off in this league? You're not." So I think what Heath did everything makes sense, and it was all fair play. I don't think he was showing up the reporters in that press conference at all. And again, all these. Let me also say about all of this. This is what I love about Adrian Heath.
Yeah, this for sure.
This
We've
is
said this a
all
lot of
real,
times.
all fair play, all interesting. He doesn't didn't do anything untoward. He's fantastic. He's brilliant. I love him. And I think he's fun to watch. And, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world that he reacted the way he did.
And I thought that he did the portion of this game that he could control as right as he possibly could have, other than possibly after they had allowed the 2 late goals. Maybe you don't bring on Mason Toye for Christian Ramirez. Maybe you make a defensive change. But, Toye in a tight game where you might have breakouts was a good call and accredited himself well in the plays that he was involved in. But other than that, I liked how he used his substitutions. I liked Maximiano was exactly the right move and played very well. And I thought that he got the tactics right again because the 3-5-2 with its full components in with Calvo eligible and all that did exactly what it was supposed to do. Calvo, by the way, assist on the second on
assist.
Darwin's goal.
Another assist.
On a ridiculous run.
Oh, my
Tackle,
gosh.
ran through 2 enemies, puts a perfect pass out to Darwin on the wing. And that's one of the freedoms you can get with Calvo in this system is the coverage behind him. I thought Miguel Ibarra had a fantastic game. Defensively, in addition to scoring his goal, he was everywhere, getting clearances, getting blocks, being where he needed to be.
Energizer Bunny.
Yeah, and it's just I think that might be the thing personally for Heath is I think he got everything about as right as he could have gotten it, and to still see it slip like that, what is he supposed to do other than just blow his top again? It's hard to pin it down onto one person or one thing.
Well, and I think the first goal came from a kind of an erroneous foul that shouldn't have had to be taken. But I can't remember if it was by Coleman or Calvo, or it was both because they both kind of were in there. And so part of his you're not staying focused was aimed at them in that situation. And then the second goal was very similar theme that United have allowed goals on numerous times is ball switched out, guy on the ball has plenty of time to cross it, the guys in the box don't mark well enough, and it's a headed goal. So I think these are all things where it's very preventable, and again, more to that you guys aren't fully focused and fully aware of what needs to take place right now.
So that's where it's at. The thing to stress for me is there's been somewhat of an internal message of they need 9 points from these 3 games at home, which is a lofty goal. They've got 3. The results happened. Even with the late goals, even with that, they did enough to get the win over a playoff team, albeit one that is horrendous on the road. Salt Lake's 4th in the West. They're bad on the road, but it's a good team.
It's a good
quality
point.
Win. You've got it. The offense is working. You've got a formation that's clicking. You've got best pieces coming in, and you haven't even used your 2 new signings yet. Who hopefully might improve the team.
Yeah, I don't know how much the offense is fully working though, because to me this was and the Toronto game's the same, right? You're talking about their most 2 recent wins and their best performances. And the reason it's really easy to point to the reason that those happened were so much Darwin.
Yeah,
it wasn't like Darwin was a good piece in a good team. Wasn't the main piece in a good team. It was the team's being carried on his back. And Ramirez, for me, his performance in this game and his performances kind of throughout the season is emblematic of that because he could not help really. He didn't help really at all. He held up play and
took
kept
up
position.
He was in the right positions.
And he was in the right positions, and he helped keep possession when asked. But beyond that, the play that stood out to me was an example. It was Darwin was attacking, and it was just a kind of a throwaway play in the second half. Darwin's in possession in a dangerous area just outside the box, and he's got the amount of defenders it's just him and Christian. And with the amount of defenders, he's either got to really go hard at his dribble and then try to shoot himself or play a striker. And Ramirez makes a decent run, and he didn't even look at him. Huh. And it's because to me, it just spoke to what Darwin has no confidence in him. And that is as damning of any indictment on Ramirez as there can be. If your best player doesn't want to pass to you or trust you, and then like two or three plays, and I can think of numerous ones that have happened over the past few weeks, but like 2 or 3 plays in this game where Darwin like teed him up, and if Ramirez was sitting right next to us right now, he'd say, "I messed those up."
Yep.
And that, when not only can that, it can happen, but you can't. The season he's had, it's become too much of a consistent thing. It started as a worrying trend, and that trend has only continued. So Ramirez's place is very much under question, and you especially can't have that type of performance after the team goes out and signs their second ever designated player, and it's a striker. At
your position. Same nationality as your best player, by the way.
Yes. Ramirez's performance was, talk about your bad times to have a bad performance, and the way that it was poor was exactly the problem that he's been having, and that's not good.
He's still sitting on 4 goals on the season in almost 1,200 minutes of play, almost 300 minutes to a goal, which is not acceptable for a primary striker that his job is to score goals. And that's the thing that he's been best at. Like, he doesn't bring that much else outside of that. He had a couple of good passing plays and a little bit of good hold-up play, but like you have him to score goals. And if he's not doing it, you might want to try something else.
Yeah, it's so weird because I've been covering this team for 3.5 years, and Ramirez has been a massive part of this team that whole time, and he's always been such a good finisher. Always. Always,
Do you
always,
think he has
always.
a nagging injury? Like, not something that would take him out, but
I would. It's very possible.
Okay.
It's very possible because
something,
I've never seen him like this in front of goal. And strikers do have these moments sometimes where they go on these dry spells. Like any sport, you can go on nasty dry spells, right? Good hitters in baseball can go on.
Totally what I was thinking of.
Disgustingly bad.
Pitchers lose a curveball or something, and they get cranked.
Yeah. And so really good pros can go on bad streaks. And I think he's a really good pro, but man, this has been a long bad streak. And at some point, your position becomes untenable, and that's where he's at right now. Like, there is no doubt in my mind that what's new guy's name?
Rodriguez.
As soon as Rodriguez gets in, like, he's going to be inserted in the starting lineup. Like, no doubt.
Was the striker the right call? You guys had talked about a midfielder, right? Or what was
midfielder? Yeah. So striker, in our last power rankings discussion about designated player slots for Minnesota United, I know my take was, but I think we concurred that center mid is the number 1 priority, and striker was second. So they went and got the second biggest priority, and frankly, with Ramirez's continued bad form, it could be priority 1A and 1B. So it made a lot of sense.
Yep, and it is what I wanted. Well, the priority on the defensive midfielder is an important one. I think that the best form of this team this season may revolve around getting a striker who can convert chances at a higher rate than what Christian's been able to do, and hopefully Rodriguez will be able to do that.
And at least provides like the right amount of competition for that, right? So now, if this Rodriguez guy comes in and he goes 3 games, no goals, then okay, well then you have Christian. You put Christian back in, and Christian starts heating up again, then good. And you could argue that maybe Christian heats up because he's got that competition and knows he needs to perform. But at least now you have those options. Also, right, now you have the options of 2 experienced strikers should you ever want to play 2 up top. And I'm actually not completely unconvinced that they won't play them together potentially and move Darwin into the midfield. Mm-hmm. I think that's very much a potential for this team and could make them wildly potent, and it actually would fit in the 3-5-2 quite well.
Yep.
Because it has 2 strikers in that system, and then Minnesota United is weakest, in my opinion, right now in the midfield. You can move Darwin into that, and he's still going to be able to get forward because you're going to be playing him with 2 other defensive midfielders in that position. I mean, I think there's great potential in that.
I totally agree. What that would realistically mean right now is that would be Colin Warner's loss positionally, I think. Who would be the player to move out of the starting lineup if that shift happens?
Yeah, I'd play Darwin as the most forward of the 3 center mids, and then Schiller and Ibsen behind him potentially.
Yep. And then still keep Gomez and Ibarra on the wings. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm totally with that. That seems to make the most sense. And you could do it now with Toye out with Ramirez, but
But he's a 19-year-old rookie.
That would leave yourself extremely short of death. Toye actually brings me to a little bit of conversation I wanted to have about the international friendly they played on Wednesday. Did you get the chance to watch that game at all?
I did not.
So I'll talk a little bit about it. I didn't write a recap of the game because the result didn't matter. They lost 2-1, but who cares about the result? It was an international friendly. What mattered is what you saw from the players in the field for Minnesota. I wrote a 5 Things I Learned piece. It's up on zonecoverage.com.
I read that.
And Pangop is the one who is closest to actually being game fit. He got his first goal for the club, scored the team's only goal, and was very fun to watch.
Nice.
Like, he was putting dribble moves on people. He was running away. He was the best offensive threat on the field the entire night for either team.
Nice.
Like, he played.
Where was he
well.
positioned?
Almost as a striker, like up top.
Okay.
So he was.
Were they playing the 3-5-2?
Yep, they were playing the 3-5-2 with him and Toye up top.
Okay.
So and Toye, like, he feels it's that same kind of thing with Ramirez where it's like he's gotten so close so many times but just hasn't gotten the goal to actually go in yet. Like, he really needs to see the ball hit the back of the net for him because he's never scored an MLS game yet. Like, it's going to happen at some point. And just whether it's for his confidence or whether it's for just mental state, whatever have you, it feels like he's going to get there. And, I mean, he's playing basically every game at this point. Toye for Ramirez is an every single game substitution.
Yeah.
But
he's always playing in identical situations where it's like he has no time to get really a feel for the game, and the teams are either up and like completely conceding possession, or they're down and they're just sporadic. So he's being put in like really tough and unrealistic environments.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. I think he can work, and I think that the goals are going to come for him just based on his plan, based on the learning that he's done. He had some really interesting comments after the game about like what this year has been like for him and what the learning process for him and how different like just getting stuff from training to on the field production is. That I thought like that's for the players that are playing in this setting. I thought that was a good perspective to get. The other thing is, so you can read all this on zonecoverage.com. We saw Awundi play. He wasn't very good. I don't think he's close. He should probably go to USL team on loan. That is my 2 cents. We talked a little bit about that it was a smaller crew in the press box that night, but just Heath actually talked about it after the game too. I forget who. I think it was Jacob Schneider, who's one of the writers at E Pluribus Lunam, asked him about being able to send some of these guys to USL teams on loan because Omsberg has been the only player this season who they've really gotten a chance to send to a USL team to just get some minutes. And for guys like an Awundi who's not getting any minutes, for Harrison Heath who's not getting any minutes, he's played 94 minutes the entire year. Like they just
if only he was being coached by his dad,
right?
Then
like
maybe he could get in.
Well, they just need game time because nothing replicates game minutes, which was what mattered for the guys that played that game. Like the only person that started that game who's been anywhere near a regular starter this year was Francisco Calvo for sentimental obvious reasons.
Yeah.
He played an hour and was whatever. Like Carter Manley's had decent amounts of time. Omsberg's had some time. Just the rest of those guys, they got to play in a game environment more often, and not having a USL team of your own to send guys up and down from to rotate around their schedule with just to get guys minutes. That's the downside of not having that yet. Is these guys, a lot of them look like they were off the pace, probably because they were. Like, it's probably not Awundi's fault that he looked off the pace and nervous because he hadn't played a game at all since he moved to the United States. Like, it's just it's one of those things that like it provided interesting things than a typical game, and I'm glad that they had the opportunity to play that game because it gave you a different look at stuff.
From like a fatigue standpoint, we had talked about how the Wednesday Saturday deals or Wednesday Sunday is kind of like a back-to-back in basketball. Do these friendlies, are they less intensive where it's not going to affect the result of the next game?
Well, they basically played nobody that mattered in that game.
Yeah.
Like Calvo played,
and they won the Salt Lake game. I mean, they nearly blew them out, right?
Well, it's so Calvo played an hour and came off, and that was partially because he was suspended for the game in Houston, so he was fresh. And then I think Ibarra came on as a sub. I think some of the midfielders came on as subs like later in the game, so they were bringing on some of the starters just to get a little bit of run in on a Wednesday. But it's like for that game in that setting in particular, y'all were outside on Wednesday. It was stupid hot.
Yeah,
ain't nobody wanted to be outside in that. So it was fine playing the backups the entire game, and I don't think a lot of people were running very hard in that game, just based on my view of it from the press box. But who am I to judge, right?
Yeah.
So we should talk about the World Cup a little bit because it's over, which means all of you guys have so much more time for the MLS now. Am I right?
Yeah.
So much more time for everything. Like, my schedule is so much freed up now.
I really actually, I think I'll miss, because I watched this and I watched Wimbledon. I think I like sports in the morning occasionally. It is the appeal, obviously, of international soccer on the weekend. But I'll miss this because they're like, it's a great way to kick off your day. Like, they're super exciting. There's something festive about soccer, even compared to other sports. Like, I don't know. It's just, I'll miss it.
It's an occasion. We'll get into some European soccer this year, Tom. We're going to talk about it when it gets started.
Yeah.
It's part
Maybe I'll learn it. I have started to learn MLS, or at least United, just obviously doing this podcast and stuff. Maybe this is the next frontier.
We can educate you, and you like drinking at 8 in the morning, right, Tom?
Anytime there's an excuse to just be a degenerate. Maybe not even start. Maybe it's like I just stay up all night and I'm just continuing in the morning.
Nic Hallett, have you ever pulled a full all-nighter to go to a bar to watch soccer the next morning?
You know what's funny is actually my answer is no.
That is a surprise.
Yeah, I've pulled a lot of all-nighters in my life. Frankly,
news.
too many.
So am I the only one that has?
I guess.
Wow. Naylor sitting back here, hands behind his head.
I've done it. I did it once. Just like had an evening of delights. Never got tired.
Delights. I want an evening of delights.
Took the bus to the soccer bar in St. Louis and watched the opening 2 rounds of games.
By the way, I should point this out. Men in Blazers, 3 locations, right? Mm-hmm. L.A., Seattle, I think. Maybe they went to New York, but St. Louis was one of their stops.
Yep.
This is when Hallett freaks out.
Look at the time.
Anyway.
I should get out of here.
No, Nic Hallett, take your moment to flaunt about being correct about the World Cup champions, the French national team.
Well, I thank you.
The floor is yours.
I've been saying
briefly
4 weeks. Briefly. I've been saying for weeks that it's just clear that the trend. It's fun because there's a trend to it, and it's the one that I've pointed out. And like I said, the catch is that it's easy to see, but people forget about it because Portugal won the last Euros. But for the last few, for like a decade essentially, the World Cup winner comes from whoever wins the Euros. And Spain did it in 2010. After winning the Euros, then Germany did it in 2014 after they had won the Euros, and France should have won the Euros in 2016. Best team in the tournament by far. Unfortunate to lose a final, in a really close game.
And they came through a difficult road too. They beat real tough teams the entire way through the bracket stage of the tournament, and it's a quality win.
And I yes, agree with everything you just said, and it's a credit to think about how not only did Spain and Germany win the Euros and then go on to win the World Cup, they made it all the way through a tournament into a final, and that's what France did in 2016. They went all the way to a final and knew what it took, knew what it felt like, and that's what allowed them to be able to do that this year. So impressive, and I'll say that they are right. So we've seen the decline. After Spain won, they didn't make it out of the group stage, the next World Cup. After Germany won, they didn't make it out of the group stage of this World Cup. But I really don't think that's going to be France's fate. And I would go as far as say that France is the favorite to win Euro 2018 because the winners of the 2018 FIFA World Cup, the French team, second youngest team in the tournament. Mm-hmm. Second youngest only to Nigeria. So that's crazy impressive.
This French team is setting the table for a dynasty if they play this right. 100%.
Agreed.
That's what it is. I want to take a moment to give all the credit in the world to Croatia, who played a hell of a final like they were on top for a good chunk of the first.
They
half.
played the final very well.
Very, very well.
Better than I expected them to.
Yes, and the road that they went on, going through 3 straight games that went to extra time, winning all of them, winning 2 of them on penalty kicks, having the stamina and the mental fortitude to come through all of those games is an immense achievement. Their squad is getting old. The key parts of their squad are getting old.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm concerned if we're going to see this level from them again, but I'm glad that we got to see them this tournament.
Their last. Honestly, it sucks to say, but I think it's just a fact. Their last chance will be Euro 2018. I'll put down good money.
This is a win though, just for like the reputation of Croatia, right? Like, who thought about Croatia like more than a week ago?
No.
Quick amendment.
Absolutely.
You keep saying Euro 2018, Nick. It's 2018.
Sorry.
2020.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Got you.
Sounding like a dumbass. Euro 2020. Croatia has a chance there, but beyond that, I don't think. I'll bet good money they won't be a factor at 2022 World Cup.
Whereas it's the interesting thing when you look at the 4 squads in the semifinals, adding England and Belgium back into the conversation. England and Belgium both have younger, talented players and a team that has the potential to grow and be a threat at that Euro 2020 tournament. Croatia might be the team that is the least threatening of the 4 in 2 years. I think that's a pretty fair statement.
And even and far less threatening in 4 years.
4 years, exactly right.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite game of the World Cup?
I think I would. My bigger takeaway would be that it is just this final cemented what already everyone thought was the best World Cup of all time.
Agreed.
And literally before that whistle blew for this final, that was the case. And then the final was arguably the best final in World Cup history because so many of them are very cagey and one-goal games or what have you. And this game was just a freaking game, and it went back and forth, and it had everything. It had spectacular skill. It had diving. It had a set-piece goal. It had a live play goal. It had a penalty kick. It had diving. It had VAR. It had everything. It was so... What a perfect bow to put on this World Cup because it had everything it had the whole time wrapped into the final, and it was brilliant.
Just a quick stat. France, won second World Cup. It was the highest scoring final since 1966.
Yep.
Exactly.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. No, yeah. Brilliant. One of the best finals in World Cup history, and that's not even an argument. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So let's go back to, I know from like my nerdy media standpoint, Fox suffered from U.S. not being in it because in the early rounds they didn't get ratings. The ratings obviously spiked as the tournament went on. However, it seems like for soccer as a whole, this has to be a win. I mean, everyone was kind of talking. I mean, maybe it's just my circles and stuff, but I feel like everyone was kind of talking about it. Like it certainly captured people's imagination at a time where baseball's going to the All-Star break. Like. I guess basketball is summer league, but they're not. This is kind of a dull time outside of I guess Wimbledon for sports, and it seems like this captured the imagination of sports fans at large. And there's even writing. I know Brian Curtis on The Ringer said there's less of these soccer haters, people coming out and
it's true.
You know what I mean? And it just seems like
true.
This maybe is a turning point, even though the U.S. was not in the tournament.
Yeah, I still stay. Yeah, it's the same kind of mood though that I've been struck by like. Throughout the tournament is just that like actually the U.S. not being a part of it has only seemed to like further the hunger and further the interest of like
to get into it, right? You want to be part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like Naylor. I always think this with the Wolves. Like forever, I liked the NBA, and I was like, oh, it'd be sweet if there was a local team that was like competitive, right? And then like last year when the Wolves come down to this final game to get in, it's like, oh, cool, the Wolves are actually part of this conversation, even if it's like, hey, Tibbs is crazy or whatever. It's like. Everyone's talking about the NBA, like that's kind of a league on the rise. And the, it's fun that the Wolves are in the mix. From a national perspective, it'd be fun being like, hey, what are the U.S.'s chances? Could they pull it off an upset? They want to be part of this.
And I think if you're the U.S., like one of the things you can hang your hat a little bit on things like Croatia making it to the final. Croatia has, what is it, like 5 million people? for their population.
They were saying it's like if Iowa and Nebraska or something were combined. It's something
That's about right.
Yeah.
Like,
single.
As an Iowa native here,
well,
confirms.
Iowa's got a population of 3 million at the last census. Like, it's about that plus a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And so if that country can go all the way to the final, why could a country of 333 million not? You know what I mean?
Right,
so
right,
I think.
Well, and then China and India say hi, but
Yeah. True. True. So it's clear. But I think that what's fun about that is it highlights that it's not resources, that the teams that are making it, Belgium, England, France, Croatia, if you just take even the Final Four, the teams that are so good at soccer, it's because it is deep into their cultural fabric.
France clearly is developing players, right? Because
France is clearly like obsessed with football. England is clearly obsessed with soccer. What do you think is the most popular sport in Croatia? I guarantee it's soccer. Belgium, same thing. That's why these teams are there. Why is Brazil always good? Because it's in their culture.
But I mean,
it's not just their sport. It's like it's a part of them. That's why they're so good.
But France probably has enough talent. They could have gone with an older, lesser team, right? It just seems like they not only, you're right, they're obsessed, but it seems like they also must develop players well if these younger guys are ready for the world stage as they were.
What's interesting about them is actually like they're actually like almost too good at developing players because all of their best players play in foreign leagues.
Yeah, we talked about this early on.
All of England's best players play in England. Most of Spain's best players play in Spain. Like France, just like they're everywhere. Like, and they're all on top teams. Like, it's a good question. I don't know exactly, and we never know. And right when every time someone wins a tournament, the microscope gets zoomed in on them. It's like, all right, what are they doing? And there's never a clear answer. You're never going to really find. You really have you're never going to have an easy answer as to what they're doing. But clearly, France is exceptional at it because not only did they just win this tournament, not only did every one of these players on one of the very best clubs in the world, but they're consistently competitive at all these tournaments. Like they lost the 2006 final. Italy won that one. They lost that final.
And won in 1998.
Yeah, and they won in 19. And they're always a factor. They're so good.
And so I looked into this because we brought it up on the last podcast. England, it seems like always talented, but also has like I don't know what the Cinderella effect or whatever. Like kind of they're always second. Is this as disappointing as it gets? Like for them because no,
not at all.
No, it's being taken as a victory. Just
really?
Because so many of the other England teams coming into World Cups have been like, whoa, they're so talented. Like, what could they do? And then they fall really short and do nothing. This was the one year, like one of the first times they're like, yeah, we shouldn't really be able to do anything. Like, so anything they do,
like an Ewing effect, kind of.
Anything they do is a bonus. Anything they do is a bonus. And so for them to make the semifinals. Given that mindset,
and they have a good future. Like, could it be England?
Yeah,
France,
it's a very young team too.
Yeah.
It's a very young team too. So, and actually, one of the maybe biggest positives for them is this tournament clarified that Gareth Southgate is a phenomenal manager and the right guy to maybe move them forward. So to take that and England, who is also really amazing at developing players, you have that to go forward with, and now the mental fortitude to know that we could make it to a semifinal, we could make it all the way to a final. It's all pluses for England in that sense.
Quick last roundup of World Cup stuff. The big awards, Golden Ball to Modric. Agree or disagree?
Agree. I think Mbappe could feel a little hard done by potentially, but he gets the young player of the tournament.
Mbappe gets the young player. There's not a single argument anywhere, I don't think.
No.
Like, not even a little bit.
No.
Courtois gets the Golden Glove. Agree or disagree?
I'm going to agree with that. Again,
do you think that Lloris lost it in the 66th minute of this game?
If he didn't, he should have, because that was outrageous.
Because I thought he'd had a really good game right up until that. Like,
he didn't. Courtois won it because of the Brazil game.
Yeah.
And he had the best solo performance of the tournament from a goalkeeper in a massive game against arguably the most talented team in the tournament in Brazil. So he won it alone on that game, and well deserved, I'd say. And
then the award that people care about the least because the goals were such bad quality, the Golden Boot to Harry Kane.
How do you feel about it? That's the question.
I'm glad he won it, but I wish he'd scored like any memorable goals.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing is, like, goal. He's not anywhere near like the top 20 best goals at this tournament.
No.
Probably,
And
he took great penalties.
I was gonna say, and
he
half-
took phenomenal penalties,
and half of them are pens.
Yeah, like so it's.
Or was it half or one more?
I think it was
half?
3 of 6.
Yeah,
Like,
okay, yeah.
so it's just one of those things that like everybody knew he was going to win it coming in.
Yeah,
Like,
and here's my real problem with it is that he honestly did miss like multiple great chances in the semifinal and the third place game. So
Credit to Subasic on that one that has gotten a lot of replay that looked like it went off the post.
That's a good point. That replay was key because it didn't look like that had happened, and the replay showed that he maybe did save that.
So
because I thought Kane
credit where it's due on that one because I thought Kane had just missed that.
I was like he should. Yeah, I thought he should have scored from that, but yeah, fair enough, maybe.
So just putting that out there. There's the roundup. So you'll miss the World Cup. Get some soccer back in your life. European teams are starting their preseasons within the last couple of weeks. All the players in the World Cups will be working back to their teams. We have the International Champions Cup coming to the Twin Cities 2 weeks from Tuesday with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur and AC Milan.
Tom's beloved
set
AC
to play.
Milan.
A huge fan. Huge fan.
I will be at that game in the stands in a Tottenham Hotspur jersey.
I think you just need to go
shame.
full body paint.
I'm not doing
go
full
up.
body paint. Absolutely not. No one wants to see that. So that's coming
certainly
up.
do
I
not.
believe. Here. The opening match day of the English Premier League, which is what I was looking up real quick, is August 10th and 11th, which is only in like 3-4 weeks.
That's wow.
So
That doesn't
there's
make any sense.
A little bit of time for the MLS to shine in the soccer spotlight, and then the Europeans come back and take over the show. But looking forward, Minnesota plays the New England Revolution at TCF Bank Stadium on Wednesday. Minnesota United plays the Los Angeles FC, who smacked them around in their new stadium in Los Angeles the last time they played. On Sunday, those 2 games will happen this week. We'll have both of those covered for you. And please feel free to check out our work on zonecoverage.com. Check out our coverage of all of the other sports. This has been another episode of the Minnesota Soccer Podcast. I'm David Naylor at Prof. Cedar, Nic Hallett at Prince Hallett, Tom Schreier at T-Schreier 3. We will see you next week. Peace.
Adios.